I actually feel like my recording room is so sweaty right now, so if I end up with little drops on my upper tash area, please do forgive me. I also like to sometimes just drink red cola out of my fancy crystal glass so that I feel like Michael in The Lost Boys. Hey there guys! My name's Megan if you're new here, and if not, welcome back for episode 23 of Killer Weekend, where each week we'll discuss a true crime case and you guys can feel free to leave your thoughts in the comments box below. That was kind of like the Macarena there. That was nice. If you like all things true crime, conspiracy theory, UFO, and all that spooky stuff in between, then please hit that subscribe button and I'll be here for you every Friday with our Fridays Killer Weekends, and also on and off every couple of Wednesdays with our Weirdo Wednesdays bonus episodes where I'll talk about something spooky I've heard. Ooh, I'm in a really annoying mood today, so if you want to switch off, that's cool. I will leave a small disclaimer at the beginning of this episode. It does involve details of violent crime, stalking and domestic violence. If that's a trigger for you, please do feel free, turn away now. Just don't look, go make a wee tea, maybe some biscuits, or just go have your dinner. I'll see you next week. So, how's everybody doing? You all happy? You all healthy? It's basically the summer here. We've had one nice day this year, which is bizarre for Scotland. It's usually pouring a rain every 5 minutes. But like I said, I'm actually quite warm today, which is nice. But I must admit, the minute the summer's here, I'm kinda like, nah. Is it Halloween yet? Is it Halloween? Did I hear someone say Halloween? So yeah, since we're kind of talking about Halloween, it'd be rude not to mention it, right? I think I should be allowed, if COVID allows it, to go out for Halloween. So fingers crossed. I missed last year, didn't get to dress up, and I love to dress up. I know I'm a grown woman, that's not really acceptable, but I do like to do it. So what should I go as, guys? What I'm looking for is something spooky but pretty. Something scary, still kind of pretty. I will have blonde hair by then, I hope. Either that or I'll be bald and I can just go as Uncle Fester. The dream come true, really. So yeah, let me know what you think in the comments box below. What should I go as for Halloween? Well, let's get started. Not sure what that was. I think I was trying to crack my knuckles, but we'll just dive into this week's case. I think everyone's main fear, every woman's main fear in life is home invasion. I don't know about you, but it's just my worst nightmare in life is someone popping off your little window screen, climbing into your bed next to you. It's just horrifying, really. And I think this is what makes killers like BTK and Richard Ramirez so terrifying. One place we are meant to feel safe is in our home, isn't it? But that wasn't the case on the Saturday, the 9th of July 2016, for 19-year-old Shana Grice. Shana had actually been working Monday to Friday, and when she was lying in bed, she was just kind of half asleep, half awake. It was 6 a.m. in the morning, and she was just kind of thinking about life. Have you ever done that when you wake up too early? Gotta love that body clock. But Shana was doing this, and she heard her back door open to her home. Now, at first she never thought much of this, kind of thought maybe one of the girls that she shared her house with had came in and out. However, she soon realised she was mistaken when heavy male footsteps started thumping their way along the corridor towards Shana's door. But when her bedroom door opened, Shana lay there terrified, trying not to shiver. The person loomed over Shana's bed and began heavily breathing and panting. Shana was petrified. She thought her young life was over, and then just as quickly as she thought this, the person did an about turn and left her room and left the residence. Only 6 weeks after this incident, Shana would be savagely murdered in that very same bedroom. This week, we will be discussing the brutal killing of Shanna Grice. Shanna Grice was born on January 13th, 1997. She was the first and only child of her mother, Shana Grice. There's not much known on Shanna's dad, her like biological dad, I think her mum remarried when Shanna was super young, and this was to a man named Richard Green, and for all intents and purposes, Richard Green was Shanna's main father figure. Shanna grew up in a little seaside town of Portslade, which is actually really close to Brighton Beach. So if you don't know where Brighton is, it's a town in England and it's a seaside town. It's kind of like, and please don't come at me if you're from either one of these places and they're nothing alike. I just think they always look alike. It's kind of like Blackpool. It's like got a big pier. There's always shows like the carnival there. And not only that, it's really popular for holiday makers and for travellers because they've got nice beaches and the nice weather. Shanna was very like the town of Brighton. She was lively, she was vivacious, she was quite loud, people said, and she was just one of those really fun-loving girls. She had a lot of friends, but kind of early on, Shanna decided that school long-term wasn't really for her. She wanted to get out and get a job and start paying those bills. She wanted a little bit of freedom as well, and to rent a flat or rent a house, you had to have a full-time job. Because of this, she then left Hove Park Secondary School at around 16 and decided to get a full-time job. Around the time Shanna was leaving school, she also started dating a young boy named Ashley Cook. Ashley was actually a carpenter, and Shanna was said to be not only a big hit with Ashley, who was infatuated with her, but also with his parents, who absolutely adored her as well. They always thought of the two as being kind of soulmates, and the fact that they'd met so young wasn't really that important because they were destined to be together. The relationship between Ashley and Shanna was said to be quite serious despite their really young age, and it was said that they had even been starting to save for a wedding, which, proper serious, they were thinking of marriage at 16. Okay. It's very Disney. Lovely. In 2015, an 18-year-old Shanna was super buzzing because she'd managed to get herself an interview within Brighton Fire Alarms as a secretary. She aced the interview and she was soon hired. This was exactly what Shanna had needed and wanted. She was able to move out of her family home. She moved into another home with two other girls as well, and they were said to have just had like the best time ever. Shanna, like I said, was super personable. Everyone loved her. She was really loud, really fun, and this attracted a lot of new friends at her new job. One of those new friends was a 26-year-old mechanic named Michael Lane. Michael Lane had worked for the company for a few years and he was instantly attracted to beautiful blonde Shanna. It was kind of a weird time for Shanna. She was at a kind of transitional stage in her life, and even though she'd been with her high school sweetheart Ashley for quite a couple of years now, it was time that she kind of branched out on her own. I mean, we've all heard the Drake song, she started wearing less and going out more. That was kind of what Shanna was doing, and this created a distance inevitably between she and Ashley, and between that distance, someone named Michael Lane felt like he was a good fit for that in-between. Michael had quickly made it known within the office that he had a romantic interest in Shanna. This was something that people said was kind of harmless. She never really took too seriously and she kind of brushed it off at first. But Michael Lane was quite persistent. He would often stop by the front desk and try and chat her up. He would constantly ask her out, even getting her number from one of his other colleagues. And it did eventually turn into a flirtation on both sides. Shanna's relationship with Ashley was still ongoing at this point when she began sleeping with and dating Michael Lane as well as Ashley. Now, Ashley was completely unbeknownst to this. He was completely in the dark, and the two started having an affair on the down low. Although it started off as just a kind of office romance, a little affair on the side, it did turn quite serious, but it seemed like someone was taking the relationship a little more seriously than the other. Michael Lane became quite infatuated with Shanna to an unhealthy level. He would often have these jealous outbursts. He would try and read her text messages. He would bombard her phone with texts and calls when she wouldn't answer them within short periods of time. And Shanna just felt like these were major red flags, and rightly so. So she dumped his ass. But poor little Mikey, he didn't handle it too well, did he? No. He then began essentially stalking Shanna and calling her constantly. He would stop by her desk at work like he used to do, but this time it was unwanted attention. And on Shanna's 19th birthday, Michael even sent a bouquet of flowers to her home address, something that she was majorly uncomfortable with, and even told her boss at work that this was something that she did not want and that was really inappropriate. One day shortly after her birthday, Shanna actually came outside of her home to find that her car tyres had been slashed. She didn't really think much of it at first. She was like, oh, local thugs. She was in a bit of a tight spot as she was on her way to work. Then lo and behold, guess who rolls around the corner? It's Michael Lane, her knight in shining armour. Or was it? This definitely pricked up Shanna's ears and made her think that it probably wasn't a local thug that slashed her tyres, and that it was possibly Michael Lane's way at becoming her kind of saviour. We've seen this before in the Emma Walker case, when her ex-boyfriend kind of slinked around the house like an intruder to make her frightened. So frightened that when he turned up, she was like, oh, thank God someone's here. Even though it was him doing it the entire time. It's just quite scary, the fact that these people think that the only way to get someone to love them and appreciate them is by manipulation. And it's definitely just the tip of the iceberg for Michael Lane's really traumatizing behaviour. Shanna's car wasn't the only car to receive some damage during this time. Ashley Cook, Shanna's long-term boyfriend, actually had his car keyed so deep that it could not be fixed with paintwork. It went right down to the metal of the car, and then a note was left under his window screen wiper saying, Shanna has and will always cheat on you. I mean, who could have that been? It's a mystery, I guess. Shanna does then call the police, which good on her, because a lot of people wouldn't have done that. A lot of people have been like, oh, he's just acting out, and made excuses for him. But she did contact the police and let them know that even though she didn't want him kind of arrested and charged with these things, she wanted someone to call him and give him a fright and tell him to stay the hell away from her, which the dispatcher did. When she spoke on the phone to the dispatcher, they then contacted Michael Lane themselves and said, we've heard a couple of things, can you just stay away from the girl? And Michael said they would. But Michael was a dirty liar, because only 1 month after the car key incident, Michael attends a work night out, and obviously they work in the same place. I'm not saying that he was wrong to be there, but when Shanna realised that Michael had arrived at the place, she then left and went to go back to her house. And when she was in the home alone, her two, I don't like these two roommates, Shanna, not gonna lie. It's kind of like Shitty Friend Awards, and they won the Oscar, because they actually thought that even though Shanna said this man had been stalking her, let's bring him back to the flat as a wee surprise for Shanna, because that's what everybody wants, isn't it? Your obsessive ex-boyfriend turning up at your door. Lovely. When Michael enters the flat, Shanna is understandably really angry. She's not only kind of had to leave her work night out because he was making her feel uncomfortable by being there, but now he's at her flat and her friends have thought that was appropriate to bring him back. So Shanna leaves her home, and then as she's walking down the street, he then runs out of the residence and kind of grabs her. He grabs Shanna's hair, pulls her head back, and tries to grab her phone away from her face, because at this point Shanna was trying to call her boyfriend Ashley. He grabs the phone off of her and starts like a crazy person, rifling through her messages like an absolute psychopath. Shanna is terrified at this point because she's not sure what he's going to do. He's actually just grabbed her and assaulted her essentially, and she's just not sure what this guy's capable of. Shanna then manages to get her phone off of Michael Lane and run away to her boyfriend Ashley's house. When she arrives at Ashley's house, Ashley's parents are so disturbed by this altercation that Ashley's mother begs Shanna to allow her to call police on her behalf, which she then does. So this is when things get a little bit bumpy for the Sussex police, because PC Trevor Godfrey arrives on the scene and interviews Shanna. But does he take her into a room alone to do so? Does he ask her if she wants to be alone? No, he doesn't. He finds it appropriate to interview Shanna regarding her ex-boyfriend in front of her new boyfriend and his parents too. Obviously, Shanna is backed into a corner at this point. She's got his parents on either side of him and she's got him sitting in front of her. And at no point does she mention the romantic relationship between she and Michael Lane. She says that they worked together and that he was attending the same party. He then came back to her home uninvited by her, only by her roommates, and then he assaulted her outside to get her phone out of her hand. Trevor does then see fit to go and speak to Michael. He finds Michael and Michael admits that he assaulted Shanna, but he has a little nugget of wisdom for PC Godfrey. He tells him that no, this is not a work colleague situation, that he and Shanna are an on again, off again couple. And this is where things then take a negative turn. You see, PC Trevor Godfrey then decides that because there's a romantic attachment going on between Shanna and Michael, that this is no longer an assault case and it's a domestic case, and therefore he doesn't want to get involved. He feels that he's been lied to, essentially, and we'll talk about that later. Not only this, Michael also provides text messages from Shanna, which proves that up until a couple of days ago, their relationship, it was still ongoing, people. So she's reporting him to the police, and then she's hooking up with him on the side. And I'm not going to say anything, guys, because we all make bad choices, and we need to remember that she was about 18, 19 at this point. I mean, really, who hasn't made a bad life choice at 18 or 19? So because of this, PC Trevor Godfrey feels like he's been misled and doesn't want to follow up. Instead, he decides to fine Shanna £90 for the pleasure of misleading police. And that's what happens. She has to pay a fine because she reported something that did happen, but because she didn't feel comfortable enough to disclose that they had a sexual relationship in front of her boyfriend's parents, she was then fined £90. Charming. This incident with the £90 fine unfortunately sets into motion a feeling of mistrust between Shanna and the Sussex police, and rightly so. She feels like they've not got her back and that they don't believe anything she tells them. I mean, obviously I will touch on this later, but it just really angered me hearing about this because it was almost like because they had a sexual relationship, that is a free pass to assault a woman, and she must have been this wily temptress, and if she hadn't been so, generous with her love, that maybe this wouldn't have happened to her. It was total victim blaming right from the start. Something else that should be kind of noted about this is that domestic abuse survivors tend to experience between 70 and 100 unreported incidents prior to reporting the first incident to the police. So if we only know about the things that were reported to the police, think about what Shanna went through before this happened and before she had to, go to the police and say what was happening to her. It just seems so wrong. Shanna lived the next few weeks of her life basically in total fear, and she even quit her job so that she would not have to see Michael anymore. However, this gave Michael exactly what he was looking for. He wanted to isolate Shanna. That's what these people do. They want to isolate their victims so that they feel like when things go wrong, they have no one to turn to but them. And this is exactly what Michael was looking for. He was thriving on this. Meanwhile, Shanna was like a shut-in in her home. Michael doesn't stop his bombardment of calls from withheld numbers, texts through other numbers to Shanna's phone, and even driving past her house, and she could see him doing this really late at night, like proper stalker shit. She was so messed up in the head during this time that she actually even broke up with Ashley Cook, hoping that this would maybe kind of satisfy Michael's needs and he would stop harassing her and threatening to tell Ashley about their secret love. But of course he doesn't stop, and he just wants Shanna back. That's all he says that he wants. So Shanna eventually gives in and she gets back with Michael, something that would be heavily criticised later and in court. Like I said, she's a young girl, she's 19, she doesn't really know what's happening. He's beating her down so much, and yeah, probably she was a little bit of a nightmare to deal with. She was going back and forth between the guys, maybe messing about with their heads a wee bit, but at the end of the day, this is not an isolated incident, and we will get into that later, but this guy is not a good guy who just went bad because of a bad girl. He's not been led down any garden path. He would have gone there on his own quite happily if you wait and listen to what he actually did to other people. But yeah, so Shanna gets a lot of blame for this, but I mean, from someone who's been in a relationship not too far from what Shanna's experiencing, I know for a fact when someone is turning up at your door, when someone is putting letters through your door, when someone is sending you constant text messages, leaving 70 missed calls on your phone a day, it can be quite overwhelming and you're not thinking straight. And at the time you're thinking, if I just get back with them, it will stop. And it never does. When you get back with them, it just ups the ante. I mean, narcissists are narcissists. They're lovely people. And I mean, at that point in my life, I was even getting messages from the boy's mum when I tried to move on. So yeah, definitely I can understand the situation she was in. And I get that some people might not understand it, but until you've walked a mile in someone's shoes, don't judge them. But as we've discussed, getting back in the relationship never kind of works out that way. And Michael Lane only becomes more possessive of Shanna, more violent, more aggressive, and this actually results in a physical altercation, to which Shanna then has no choice but to end the relationship and say goodbye to Michael. You may remember, guys, as well, how we began this episode talking about this unknown intruder in Shanna's home, but that wasn't any unknown intruder. You see, on the Friday before this all happened, Friday the 8th of July 2016, Michael Lane had actually gotten access into Shanna's home and stolen the backdoor key. He then, on the Saturday morning at 6 a.m, let himself in through the back door, walked to Shanna's bedroom and stood over her, breathing heavily whilst he thought she was asleep. He then decided to not do whatever he was in there for and walked out and left the home. Shanna then wanted to know who this was. She ran to the nearest window and watched as Michael Lane walked away from the home in the opposite direction. This is a major red flag from Michael Lane. We're now seeing his behaviour progressively get worse, and he's now willing to break into her home and watch her sleep. We see this all the time with peeping Toms, who then turn into rapists, who then turn into rapists and murderers. There is a natural progression here, and it's actually not the first time that Michael Lane has exhibited this kind of worrying behaviour. You see, over the course between 2006 and 2016, before he met Shanna, he'd actually been reported to police by 12 women. 12 women! Ladies and gentlemen, one of his surviving victims had actually said that he'd been calling her constantly, heavily breathing on the phone. He would then message her and say he was outside and that I can see you. I mean, come on, this guy is like a serial killer waiting to happen. And all these women said the exact same thing, that he was unhinged, he was a predator, and that they were so worried about what he would do if he didn't get his own way. He even offered a girl, I think it was like £500, if she would spend a night in a hotel with him and just let him do whatever his fantasies wanted to do. Okay, no, Michael, it's a no from me. No one wants to be tied to a bed and murdered voluntarily. Thank you. Possibly even more terrifying, when Michael was a young guy and he was involved in the Scouts, he was a Scout leader, he was actually accused of trying to groom a 14-year-old little girl who was in the Girl Scouts. When he realised that he was going to be under investigation for this, he then left the Scouts, and years later he then managed to rejoin the Scouts in a different area because they had failed to look into his history with the Scouts, which is absolutely petrifying. So he had all of this really dark behaviour before his psychotic obsession was then fixed on Shanna Grice. But guys, the Sussex police totally failed to see all this, and they never looked into any of the claims that had ever been made against him, and they just brushed it off as a harmless lover's tiff. Shanna at this point starts to see past his lovable and apologetic side that he would often play to her after these outbursts, and she decides that she is going to call him and try and record him whilst she gets him to admit breaking into their home, which God love her, do you know, she's so brave. She actually does do this. There is a recording, I'll put the link for that in the description box below so you can hear it. And she says to him, why would you break in? Like, do you know how scary that was for my flatmates? And he's very apologetic, much like a typical narcissist. And he's very, very all about the sorries, but about no actual help being sought. She tells him to go and get help, which, well done, girl. He should go get help. But he never actually says that he's going to do this. He just says that he's not right in the head, which I could have told you that for free, Michael. It's kind of weird when you listen to the tape as well, because whilst she's obviously trying to get him to admit what he's done, he is apologising, but it's kind of like hollow apologies. And then not only that, he has an excuse, if you can even call it that, for why he broke into their home. When she asked him about it, he said that he wanted to come in and speak to her. And I'm like, yeah, that makes total sense why you would stand over her bed like a dementor at 6 a.m. in the morning, Mikey. Okay. I just don't believe him. I really don't. And Shanna never either. So she then sent the recording to the Sussex police. And I bet we're hoping now, you know, it'll be taken a bit more seriously. I mean, this guy crept into their home and watched her sleep, unbeknownst to the rest of the housemates. But no, sadly it doesn't. The recording lands in the lap of PC John Mills, who then treats this pretty similar to how PC Trevor Godfrey treated it. He sees it as an ongoing kind of lover's spat. He reads the notes on it from the Sussex police, even though he doesn't actually check any notes on Michael Lane himself, and he would have realised that he is a predator, but okay. So then he decides to give one of the most lenient punishments to Michael Lane and basically gives him a caution for stealing the house key. So not for breaking in with the house key, not for stalking her, but literally for taking the house key away with him. That's it. So this young girl is yet again let down by Sussex police, even though she's in fear for her life. Shanna at this point is absolutely devastated because she's not been listened to, but not only that, she's completely isolated herself. She lost a job she was so proud of, she's lost some friends through that job, and she's also lost her long-term boyfriend Ashley Cook, all because of this monster and the power he's holding over her life. The abuse from Michael sadly didn't stop. He began calling Shanna from his home phone number because she'd blocked his mobile number at this point, and just began breathing down the phone. The calls were traced back to Michael's home, and it is said that he would call her up to 7 times in an hour. Who even thinks like that? Like, who thinks that one day they will tell their grandchildren, you know how I got your granny? I got her by calling her 18 times a day and panting like a dog down the phone. Works like a charm, boys. Also at the same time, he would up the ante and follow Shanna around everywhere she went. She had reconciled back with Ashley at this point because of all the trauma. She needed someone to turn to, and Ashley Cook was there for her. So the two had rekindled their relationship, and this was something that Michael wasn't happy with at all. So he would follow Shanna around. When she'd be driving around in her car, she would look in her little rear view mirror. Oh, there's Michael Lane. Everywhere she went, it was like he knew where she would be at all times. Remember that, will you? Shanna would even go to her local shop. There he would be. She would go to her friend's house. There he would be parked outside. She couldn't escape this man, and she had no clue how he knew where she was. Shanna again turns to PC John Mills for help, and I think she's so brave, because I know for a fact, having been fined, then kind of fobbed off after this person has broken into your home and assaulted you on the street, and they're still not taking her seriously. I actually think she's so brave for even going back a third time to the police, because how would she know that they weren't going to fine her again or possibly charge her with something for wasting police time? So definitely, I think, you know, she was such a brave person, and we should all remember that about Shanna. Sadly, and you'll get so angry at this case, guys, so I'm just going to pre-warn you, it just gets worse. PC John Mills does not take Shanna seriously at all again, and he's said that he's going to look into it, but then she sent a letter a few days later saying that the case has now been closed. And to Shanna, it makes no sense at all. The abuse hasn't stopped. I mean, if the abuse is clearly still going on, how can the case be closed? It makes no sense. I just feel like as police officers, when they see a day how many domestic violence cases can completely get out of hand and turn into killings and rapes and serious crimes, I don't understand why they think that because it is a domestic, it makes the likelihood for violence less. If anything, statistically, it makes the risk for violence greater. As we all know, it's always the husband first. There's a reason for that. And I just feel like these people failed basic police training. Essentially, PC Mills and PC Trevor Godfrey were painting Shanna to their superiors as this cheating temptress, and poor Michael Lane just got caught in her crossfire, and that's what's making him so crazy. And they don't want to ruin this young boy's life for one bad girlfriend, when Shanna's life was in complete tatters at this point and she didn't know who to trust. She didn't even feel safe in her own home. Shanna decides that the police aren't going to help her, so she might as well just try and move on with her life with her high school sweetheart Ashley. They were said to be starting to save again, thinking about the future, possibly a house and maybe a wedding after that. But Michael Lane wouldn't let the couple move on, and in a last-ditch effort to meet Shanna again, he then blackmails Shanna with information that he knows could lead to the end of her relationship with Ashley Cook. Because remember, at the very beginning, Shanna was still seeing Ashley and Michael at the same time, something that Ashley sadly wasn't aware of. So she agrees to meet Michael at a local hotel, and hopefully this will be the end of it. He says that if she meets him one last time, it's done, it's dusted, she can move on and he'll move on after that. But sadly, that's not the case. In the week before Shanna's death, there was a few incidents that took place that were also red flags and that could have been raised to police in order to prevent this from happening. Michael Lane met up with a female friend that he used to work with, and when he was hugging her goodbye after telling her all about this bad girl who broke his heart, grow up, you're a 26-year-old man, she's a 19-year-old girl. Anywho, just had to get that out of my system. He was hugging this friend, and when he was hugging her goodbye, he said, "Oh, she'll pay for what she did." Okay, bye, Michael. If one of my male friends said that to me, I'd be like, "Oh, pal, what do you mean about that? What exactly are you referring to with that?" I mean, words, just no words. It reminds me so much of the Rebecca Schaefer case as well, when Robert Bardo was going around telling all his family and friends that he was going to murder this young actress he was obsessed with. He was turning up at people's houses telling them how obsessed he was with this woman, and no one did a damn thing. It's just lovely. It's just always great to know that you can count on people to come forward when need be. As I said before, that was one of my friends. I'd be like, "Okay, 1 second. Hello, 999. I just don't get these people, but I guess, they must live with this every day of their lives, and sadly, that's just a sad fact of it. They never called the police. They probably regret that. On Thursday, the 25th of August 2016, Michael Lane went into a local supermarket petrol station where he bought a can of petrol. He then walked along to Shanna's residence on Christory Road, where he lay in wait until he knew Shanna would be alone in the residence. He entered the property. He entered Shanna's bedroom using a kitchen knife taken from Shanna's kitchen. He then slit her throat, poured petrol around the room and set it on fire in the hopes that Shanna and the evidence he left behind would be destroyed. The things he hadn't anticipated when committing this crime was bus CCTV footage, and we've seen this before in the Queen's Park murder. Buses are now fitted with CCTV on the front windshield, so therefore a bus actually caught him in Shanna's street going to and from the residence. A bloody shoe print was also found at the scene, and these matched trainers that were found in a nearby bush which contained the DNA of Michael Lane. Also caught on CCTV, because he's an absolute fool, he was using Shanna's ATM bank card. He went to an ATM machine, took out £60 from Shanna's account and proceeded to then change his clothes and carried the bloody clothes he was wearing that day in a blue carrier bag. He really wasn't trying to get away with this at all, guys, to be fair. Sadly, Shanna was then found after she had failed to arrive at work at around 8:30 a.m. that morning. The alarm was raised and her boyfriend Ashley Cook was contacted. His dad then went round to the property on Christory Road, where he then found the deceased body of 19-year-old Shanna, partially burned and throat slit. Shanna's mum and stepdad were angry and frustrated about the death of their daughter, and rightly so. They were hungry for answers and wanted to know exactly what had happened to their daughter. It was no secret to Shanna's family and friends about who had committed this crime. The words on everyone's mouth were Michael Lane, and the police actually knew this themselves because of the previous reports that had been made by Shanna about Lane. They decided to interrogate Lane, and after hours of interrogation and constant denial that he'd even been at Shanna's that morning, he finally confessed when he was met with the overwhelming circumstantial evidence against him, like we said about the shoes, like we said about the bus cam, the can of petrol on CCTV, and he confessed that he had been there that morning, but that Shanna had already been dead, girls and boys. Yes, he said to police, and I quote, "I mean, you won't believe me, but anyway." And it's like, no, we don't believe you, Michael, but continue. Tell us your little story. He said that he was casually stalking Shanna as per usual that fine day, and he noticed that her car was there past 8:30 in the morning, which was unusual for Shanna as he knew she worked at 8:30. So like any good stalker, he decided to then help himself into the home, where he then found Shanna's dead body. Someone else had killed his beloved. So he then, unlike a nice person, decides to not phone 999, run out of the house and hide that he ever saw Shanna. Happily, for the first time in forever, the police don't believe Michael Lane for once, and neither do the jury. Michael is then brought up on the charges of first-degree murder of Shana Grice. He planned and plotted this murder. He waited till Shanna was all home alone and then went in and made his move. Obviously, he pleads not guilty because he's a piece of shit and wants to put the family through as much trauma as possible, and he is happy for Shanna's name to be then dragged through the mud. Shanna's family said during this court case, she was basically put on trial for her behaviour and for her romantic choices. They said there was so much victim blaming on the side of the defence, which basically led the jury to believe that this guy was an innocent young man and that their daughter was an evil woman who had lured him into a dangerous trap where he felt his only answer was to take her life. Shanna was constantly victim blamed by the defence, and not only this, it was suggested that because Shanna was so promiscuous that several men could have been the ones to do this to her, as she had so many people coming out of that house. It was like a revolving door. How could they prove that it was Michael Lane? And this in itself just goes to prove he is a heartless piece of shit, because if anyone actually cared about the victim, they would not put the victim's family through that, and they wouldn't speak about them like that. Like, this young girl literally had one childhood boyfriend and then met Michael Lane, and the fact that they were trying to portray her as some harlot it's embarrassing and a stretch at best. The jury thankfully felt the exact same, and they only took 2 hours to deliberate before finding Michael Lane guilty of first-degree murder of Shanna Grice. The judge then sentenced Michael Lane to 25 years to life in prison, and whilst he made his closing statement, he actually laid some home truths at the feet of the Sussex Police Department, saying that Shanna had been let down and that had certain measures been taken, Shanna's life could have been saved. The judge stated that he believed that because of their negligence, Michael Lane was able to make a playground of Shanna Grice's life for himself. Something had to change, and Shanna's family felt the exact same way. They wanted someone to be punished for the way Shanna was treated during her ordeal, and I don't blame them one bit. So therefore, there was an investigation placed into not only PC Trevor Godfrey, the man who fined the victim £90, also into PC John Mills, who gave someone a slap on the wrist for literally breaking into their home and standing over them while they were asleep. And not only that, for not following up when there was other activities that were being reported. Trevor Godfrey was the police officer, like we said, who fined Shanna the £90, and it was his decision to not take that case any further, even though Michael Lane had admitted to assaulting Shanna, but because she had hidden the fact they were in a relationship, he acted like a 5-year-old and had a tantrum. You would think that with now a life lost and all this guilt weighing on his shoulders, he would apologise to the family and admit some wrongdoing, yes? No, he didn't. He was as stubborn as ever and said that no, she lied to me and she lied to my face, and therefore she deserved to get that £90 fine. He is talking about this dead young woman and still says he stands by the fact that because she lied to him about their relationship, that she deserved to get a £90 fine. Do you also think she deserved to get murdered, Trevor? Because that's how it's coming across. He literally is so infuriating, and when he's talking in this inquest, he actually makes a statement that, I mean, what was I meant to think? She gave the guy 5 kisses at the end of the message. Sorry? What? So because you send 5 kisses at the end of a message 3 weeks ago, it means that someone can't emotionally or physically abuse you in the weeks to come. Okay. Like I said, this man is an absolute monster, and he was only charged with misconduct, not with gross misconduct. So had he not already retired, conveniently, at this point, he would not have been fired, which is crazy to me, like absolutely crazy. And the way he speaks about Shanna, even still to this day after she's been murdered, the way he victim blames, 5 kisses, whatever, Trevor. I actually feel so sorry and pray that he doesn't have a daughter, because God knows how he treats her. I hope he doesn't have a son, because God knows what he's teaching him at home. And if he's got a wife, I feel sorry for you, because he clearly doesn't think of women that highly. Probably has her chained to the bloody kitchen. Then we have PC Mills. Now, still don't like you, but you're not the worst one, so we'll move on. And he actually says that he understands that there was some wrongdoing on his part. He feels like he was kind of uneducated when it came to stalking and possibly could have handled it better, but at the time he didn't feel like he was a massive risk to Shanna, and therefore he treated it as so, because not one of the police officers looked into his criminal history or into any of the reports that had been filed about him before. So he actually receives a gross misconduct charge, and had he not already conveniently resigned a few weeks before, he would have been fired for this. So yeah, it just baffles me. The whole case is bizarre. Shanna's family are rightly so enraged at this. They feel like this is a total joke. I think they even said the entire inquest has been a total joke. I mean, one man had retired and he wasn't even going to be fired had he not. And then the other guy, he resigned, so he wasn't going to be accountable for anything. I think the family just felt really, really let down. I mean, the Sussex police have said that since this, they have launched an education programme where their officers will be in-depth trained on stalking and domestic violence. But obviously, you know, that's all we can really hope for is re-education. I mean, we say this all the time on this channel. Education is key. I think, you know, these things have to be taught in school, because essentially Shanna's life was ended because a little boy couldn't be told the word no. Shanna Grice is fondly remembered as the fun-loving, loud, wild, party fun girl that she was, and also as the responsible hard worker and loving daughter that she was as well. Ashley Cook, her long-term on-again and off-again boyfriend, who was by Shanna's side through all of her torment, stood by her in her death, and despite learning about all of this happening with Michael, he still says the kindest things about her on social media and has since moved on with his new girlfriend. I really hope that he finds peace. I hope Shanna's family find peace. I think the most terrifying thing is that this could have happened to any of those girls that Michael Lane was involved with, and especially the girl who said that he was showing up outside her house and was saying things like, "I see you" in the window. I mean, definitely, I think given it a few months' time, that could have progressed and someone else could have been on the chopping block for Michael Lane. What do you guys make of this week's episode? I mean, it's wild. Have any of you ever been stalkers? You ever stalked a girlfriend? don't do it. It's naughty, naughty. Please guys, also about this episode, no victim blaming in the comments. I'll just delete them, so don't put them in it. I totally get it. Not everyone might understand this kind of relationship, but as a 19-year-old girl, I really don't think we can say anything about how she handled things when she was faced with an abusive 26-year-old man who was used to grooming young girls and manipulating young women. So yeah, let's just leave that at the door. I hope you liked this week's episode. If you do like everything to do with true crime, like I said, give us a wee subscribe. Also, give that video a big thumbs up if you liked it. Thumbs up, no thumbs downs, please. I don't like them. I'll be here for you again next Friday. And like I said, my work schedule is soon changing in about 2 weeks, a week and a half. So I'm so excited. I'll be more active on my YouTube channel. And yeah, I'll have lots of more spooky content for you. You can also see what I'm up to over on my vlog channel, which is Megan T. If you fancy following me, please don't follow me home. It's not okay. On my Instagram page, at Megan True Crime, I also have a cheeky little TikTok page, which I barely post on, but okay, at Megan.truecrime. Please guys, remember, stay safe, lock your doors, don't talk to strangers, and remember boys, if someone says they don't like you, that's okay. It's okay, alright? Don't be a creeping Jesus, okay? See ya! Yeah! That's refreshing.